Now I have to bring you down to the ground with a thud, because you've been somewhere up in the skies, getting fascinated by possibilities. I'd like to see how we start looking at the probabilities, how we make things practical, and but before I do that, let's just see what is the perception of leaders as captured by some study that EY did last year, which basically says that CEOs are getting curious, getting concerned, getting excited to see that we should do something to fund the projects, even if it's about finding out what we can do with Gen AI. But then there are challenges. The top challenge is the skill gap, which will be true for any new thing that comes. The second is, what do we do with it? There's lack of clarity on what kind of things you can do with it. And then there's a whole lot of other things which we'll not look at, but we'll look at these two, which is how to build the capability to even understand what to do, if I see the essence of it. So CEOs want to get started at least with that part. And then there are studies which are trying to say, where will the biggest gains come from, as seen by people who've gone down the journey a little bit, who have applied their mind to the subject. And the top right points towards the rightmost is customer operations, where there are a large number of repetitive transactions which all organizations have to do, where a large number of people are involved in routine repetitive transactions in dealing with customers. And quite close to that is the whole space of software engineering. Whether it is for doing the normal corporate IT stuff, or the fact that product development of all type of products is basically now a very software embedded, software based kind of activity. And of course, other things in the higher graph are activities of sales, marketing, and product creation, product R&D. So even when you heard Jaspreet talk about what each of us does for a living, a lot of it is around the kind of activities which I mentioned on top, barring of course software, which more and more people are becoming software professionals. So when we were talking about kids learning coding, which many of us didn't agree with, but it was about saying that we have to figure out how to instruct intelligent programs to do what we want them to do and to increase productivity. So, put a little differently, there are there'll be another one, fourth kind of thing as well, but basically, how do we get people to get interested to start working with Gen AI? The word talent is put there. How do people start understanding what to do? In general, all kind of people, because we are saying whatever you do, there's something that Gen AI could do to make you more productive. Maybe 5%, maybe 500%, whatever you do. The second thing is to say that in an organization, we have all kind of role holders, and there are some roles which are very large in numbers, and let's call them pivotal because they're important, they are scale. So relationship manager in a bank, or a branch manager or branch officer, or inside sales people dealing with customers in large numbers. So roles which are at scale, but where if you improve productivity a little bit, it can become very significant. So pivotal roles from an organizational context, if you can improve their productivity, then you are improving productivity not of 1 or 2 or 3, but of tens of thousands. So look at that as one part, and then productivity, that gives you productivity improvement. But there is also a lot of imagineering going on around saying, well, what beyond productivity of people? What about reworking the process that we use to do a certain job? And when we start looking at, now this is a busy slide, just not to read the detail, but to say that the use cases, what you can do with Gen AI, you could put a simple 3x3 matrix. One is individual, what can individuals do, what can teams do, what can the enterprise do. So different levels of complexity and coverage. And there could be basic ones, there could be intermediate ones, there can be advanced ones. So some of the organization redesign questions go into enterprise advanced. Frankly, today we don't have enough evidence to say that some of those complicated things can be done without compromising certain things like privacy, like security, like violation of IP. Whereas at the top left would be easy things to do which individuals do. And one argument we've been trying to make here, when I said we have to come down to the ground, is an area which is evolving where the risks are not fully understood. Would you expose the organization to large risks at a time when IP safety is not clear, when privacy data is not, rules are not defined, and as we said, regulation is just happening? So the argument that I'm trying to make is that a top left type of applications would be perhaps places to start because they're lower risk, but since they cover a large number of people, there could be returns. So top left, just to give an example, write, edit, review content. All of us do that for a living. What shape the content takes is different. If I'm a journalist, or if I'm writing articles, or if I'm creating in an ad, I'm creating new material, then my whole life is that. So there, if there are ways which give productivity, there'll be huge productivity. But even for normal folks, there's a lot of communication that you do, a lot of editing that you do. I know that in Delhi, when I have to get a letter written by a stenographer, thing of the past, but if you ever do it, the amount of time you take to correct it is a pain. It can be quite a pain if you are in the marketing function writing out many letters just to keep correcting the errors that people make. Things like that may sound mundane, but they can save you time and they can give you a much better output. Or the fact of gathering, analyzing data. You have data all over the place. And I think we saw some examples of pulling things together, preparing for something. You could be saving a substantial amount of time and having a much better presentation. And then, of course, if you're studying many things, here research is not the R&D, but you're putting together something, you have a limited time window, you have to read many things, you can put it to good use. For example, a very simple thing for me when I was trying to understand Gen AI. All of us use Google. So you want to search something, you put keywords, and you get 10,000 hits, sometimes a million hits, sometimes 50 hits. What do you do with it? Do we all go and read all the stuff that's coming of the hits? We don't, we can't. And one very simple way to understand Gen AI is to ask the question that these million hits which are there, what is the essence and sum total of that? That is what Gen AI is doing. It's reading all that came up there in that little search and translating it into text or graphs or images. More text, but soon from text into pictures and then moving pictures. And then not just text, one mode of maybe voice into building stuff for you. So a lot of things can be done for normal folks and senior folks and so on, which we do in our daily life, which could be a starting point. Before, when you start going to the right and you start going down, then you're beginning to deal with the data of the organization. You're beginning to open up the data, which the IT function will be very uncomfortable. So in fact, the big pushback from IT function in Gen AI right now is, do you even know what you're doing? Because Gen AI generates stuff which it cannot explain. So another way to look at AI versus Gen AI, AI will be algorithmic. You can ask it to display what it did to arrive at the situation. Gen AI cannot predict. The same question, you ask it twice, you may get slightly different things. And since it doesn't have this whole disciplined algorithmic effort to put things together, it'll see a lot of things and make likely pictures, should we say. So and it may have picked up content from somebody else who owns that content. It may go and search and pick out data from personal files of your executives which are not yet protected. So the concern coming from the IT side, which is genuine, is that this is too powerful an engine which we don't understand yet, and subjecting it to freedom to walk around and pick up from here and there and make outcomes which need to be checked. So why co-pilot? And why pilot? Because someone has to check. So the top left type of applications, there's an effort of checking going on. But the moment you start making it in a black box, and ChatGPT is a black box, then you're running risks which are very high. And in fact, there's concern, deep concern at this time, that the top lower right-hand things are not so clear. And therefore, should we jump into that, though they look like high return applications? And what we, at least at this time, and for me, this moment of Gen AI is reminding me of the mid-80s, when we were talking these things to CEOs of companies about IT and what it does. Everybody wanted to do something with IT. There was great excitement. There was lack of understanding and knowledge. And we were busy and get very excited trying to tell people where to start, what to do first. So Gen AI to me represents a similar moment in the life of technology. Because it's very easy to use. I think that point was made right in the beginning. Anyone can use Gen AI. But what it produces could be something that we couldn't comprehend fully. It could have gone and picked up data from places which we are not authorized to take. It may open up data for which privacy guidelines are not put into place, and the guardrails are not into place. But since it can be used by everybody and can give some benefit, the position that we are taking as NIIT is that organizations need to start at the low risk end, which is not necessarily low return. It could be reasonable return. And in the spirit of what Mr. Kamath talked about, because by the way, they will be the first organization which is embracing this fully as we speak. We're just finalizing an arrangement that everybody there has to be given the literacy, and different people go to different level of complexity like they should do with any change. So we thought of 100-day, and this was a question put to us in talking to CEOs, that give us a roadmap of where we should start and what can be achieved in 100 days. And so we are saying that you, first of all, like with any large process of change, there has to be an organizational alignment. So if 85% of the CEOs are saying we want to do something, then that has to be articulated. That has to go into the system. And so the context and priorities and an organization-wide awareness of what Gen AI can and cannot do pretty much becomes the starting point in this journey. And so the alignment and onboarding then goes from top level. It then starts going to conversations of business leaders who start thinking about, okay, I get an idea of what it does. Now, what else can I do which can be more impactful? And the term use case, I think all of us are aware of. So discovering, uncovering, comprehending, thinking about what could be use cases to which this new technology and capability people are building can be put into use would be one journey that is going that side. But this side, then you're also start going a little deeper, and we're just putting day 45 as an indicative picture to say, you start looking at maybe these pivotal roles. You start looking at many things that organizations do at scale and say, okay, now that's a use case. Now, can we start taking a look at how all our sales agents interact with customers at scale? And can we figure out a way by which that can be made very productive? Now you're beginning to work with the large organization process, which can have large consequences. But you're doing it after you've had individuals work with it, learn, make mistakes, build capability, and so on. So the use case discovery process, then you start going day 45 and beyond into that. And finally, you would go on the part of alignment and onboarding to not just the pivotal roles where you want to study, but across the whole organization. In terms of use case discovery, you would have thought of many ideas and you start then streamlining activities. And this is where actually the IT function has to start getting connected, because now you're getting into the organization, in the information system of the organization, the information foundation on which the organization is working. And then you start saying, okay, now we're building more complex applications. We need to have more detailed technical guardrails for the way in which the data will be used. We need to get technical people involved to make sure it's secure. And if you're taking data from outside, you have to go into arrangements to make sure you're taking data which you want to use. And then you start going into much more elaborate systems. And we are saying that perhaps in a medium-sized organization, the first of such things could be demonstrated in the organization after taking due care. And so I will not talk about this. We are trying to put together what we term as something as an AI factory, because we started using Gen AI pretty much when it came. In fact, when we look at Gen AI, for all of you, one is that you are responsible to build the talent in the organization, across the organization. So you have to start carrying everybody along. But then you're also here because you're trying to see that in the function of L&T, what can Gen AI do? That we have a session first thing tomorrow, which is by the team that has been working, our chief learning scientist and his team, on what to do with Gen AI in the L&D function. That's the second dimension on what we look at. And for that, we have put together in our setup a framework which we are talking of as the Gen AI, as a factory, which can help you to put together your programs in a much like the lower right-hand case as it applies to L&D, which is why we thought we would bring it up here as well. And again, these can be discussion that we can do one-on-one if required. So I just wanted to therefore conclude by saying that a lot is possible, a lot is gray, the risks are not known yet. Some of the huge promises may or may not pan out, but some of the here and now can. And therefore, in a pragmatic sense, we are encouraging leadership teams and organizations to start embracing it carefully, gently, with low-level application, but in a pervasive way, much like when we started with IT. The digital literacy was a step one before we went into deep usage of AI, as you'd call it. So I'd like to stop here and then we open it up for Q&A. So if we can have more lights on, I think this is the time for everybody to raise their questions. We have about 20 minutes. And why don't we come here? Maybe we'll do what you and I and Vijay were doing. So now there are mics available. Yeah. Okay. So first question.
Sure. So first of all, thanks. Very interactive session. A lot of learnings comes in. I'm just thinking aloud. Well, you said about the productivity will increase and eventually results in more dollars coming in. I'm just thinking aloud, looking at a population like the India has. So what are we doing for ensuring people are not unemployable? I mean, as an organization, if we look at a learning and development, there are many things which might be replaced by the technology. Like we talked about developers, we talked about content creators and all. What as an L&D fellow we can do so that their jobs are protected and they are able to contribute in the organizations? Thank you.
Yeah, one of the things I kind of skipped over because we wanted to had a certain amount of time is this whole question about AI and jobs, and it's an often asked question. It's a worry, and especially as you said in a large country like India. Now, if we kind of think of, we'll come to the India part, but let's start thinking at a business level, at a corporate level. If you're a software engineer today and you don't use GitHub Copilot, frankly, the software engineer next to you who uses it will be able to do your job. Similarly, if you're a journalist, you can churn out 5 stories rather than 3 or 2, if you use it. If you're a marketer, similarly. And so lots of times we say that AI will take our jobs, but that's actually not true. AI will not take your job. It's a human being using AI who could. And that's a very important thing to understand. Okay, so similar to any other technology which came in, if you don't know Excel, for example, and you're an accountant, I mean, you might as well not be an accountant. Someone who uses Excel is going to be a better accountant than you. And so with these coming in, the opportunity, while there's this quote threat that this would take jobs, this, that, whatever, the opportunity is that actually if more and more people are empowered with it, there is that much more production that can happen. You think of software, for example. My belief is that the demand for software is infinite. Every company you go to, if you ask that what is the holding thing, what is the bottleneck, it's IT, software. Some system hasn't happened. And so if you could kind of, with the same amount of people, do 5x more software, you actually can 5x your productivity, revenues, etc. Therefore, you talk about a country level. There's an opportunity to have 1 billion plus creators. This is a creator economy. Now, there's so many people. It's not only just about working in corporates or jobs any longer. People who are creators are making money. There are massive tools out there, YouTube, etc., which help creators make money. And so here is something which, if you train or skill people the right way, you have a billion creators. So I think you look both sides to look at it. Now, obviously, it's up to us to grasp this and make this happen, rather than not or shy away from it. And so I look upon it as actually as a massive opportunity, especially for a country like India. We made the digital revolution happen. Everyone can now use digital tools, perhaps the same way as a digital public good, something I call Jan AI, in fact. Okay, we can actually do the same thing for at a population scale.
Hi, my name is Shrikant, and I am from Hexaware Technologies. So my question is, you all also have NIIT University, and going back to the previous explanation as well, if everybody were to become an influencer and start earning money, we would already be a $1 trillion economy more than what we are currently, I suppose. And I would also like to share my personal example over here. I tried getting a previous video through ChatGPT of Sachin Tendulkar while explaining a book kind of thing. Being in the L&D industry for 25 years, I couldn't do that. So how do we bridge this gap? Because communication is going to play a significant role in terms of putting our thought across exactly to the machine the way we want to and get the kind of result we would expect. So, how do you think that, the entire nation, the young generation which is going to be there, is going to get skilled on this and also get employed and also get payment as well? I would be the happiest person if all of them can become a, influencer and start earning money as well. Thank you.
Well, that is one method to earn money, and horses went off and so on. That's a global issue. I'm saying let's just be selfish about India. This is India's time, really speaking. I mean, when the engineering started, colleges went from a capacity of 90,000 seats in 1999 to more than 1 million within a decade. We were concerned about what it's doing. One thing it did, it let the software industry keep the cost of its operation competitive at a global level. Many other countries tried to do it. Ireland tried to do it. Many countries tried to do it. But with their populations, they just couldn't scale. Now, things have become far more global with connectivity. Roles have become fungible and global. So I think from an Indian's point of view, the opportunity to serve the world for many things that you can do with connectivity and Gen AI and content generation is so large that we focus on that for the moment. Let's not worry about what it does to mankind. That's my view, a pragmatic, down-to-earth view. Skill our people on many things, and what things like that do is if they're increasing productivity, then whatever we do in any field, if we can do it 50, 40, 50% more productively in 2 or 3 or 4 years, that is what will raise the economy. So at one level, I just say, Indians are inventive, Indians are, and I think in terms of policy as a nation, we're building platform, the whole digital public infrastructure thing is happening at this time as we speak, right? That will enable everybody to engage. in the digital world. And if we are creators, then we create many kinds of things in this environment, and that is what will create more and more jobs, which is what really we are chasing. Not a government job alone, but the startup phenomena of 1 lakh and so on. All of that is real. So people are being able to do things, and when you hear Mr. Kamath saying 90 days is what I need things done, which cannot be done in large corporations. So I think this is a setting for enabling people to become creators and do more things in an economy which is getting to be digital with an infrastructure which is digital. I would leave it there for the moment.
My question is to Jaspreet. So my name is Kiran and I represent ICICI Bank. So I have two questions, Jaspreet. One, can you reconfirm? Are you saying that some of the ethical consideration like bias or misinformation doesn't exist in Gen AI? Second question is, now how do you evaluate performance of a Gen AI? How do you know that the tool is working? Because today we are working on voice analytics and email analytics in the sense that we have our call center, right? We are trying to analyze voice of these agents and see, are they responding correctly to the customer? Are there any developmental needs around these agents? Similarly, we get lakhs of mails every day. Now, how does Gen AI help us to generate those responses? And before my agent clicks S, how do I know that the response is right? How do I basically evaluate the performance of the Gen AI?
Sure. So I'm sorry in the first one if I miscommunicated, but Gen AI is biased. There is bias, there are privacy issues. And there's a very simple reason that it's biased. It's because the data it was trained on was made by biased human beings. We are biased. And very frankly, till the end of time, there will be no zero bias generative AI, like there will be no zero bias human beings. The deal will be, number one, to try and reduce the bias as much as possible, but more importantly, know that there is a bias, and so therefore correct for it through various methods, including human beings. So that's one. On the second one, it's a more, if I may say, more exact question. And look, even as we speak, there are multiple tools which are being evaluated to decide how accurate a Gen AI response is. Is there like one universal or three universal tools yet? No. Are there super effective tools? Not yet. The most effective tool is still a human being, okay, to decide that. But as we speak, tens or hundreds of them are being made. You can go to Hugging Face, for example. Hugging Face has a repository of all the new tools which are coming in, and someone can choose which of them probably makes sense for a situation like yours, because for different situations they'll be different. But as it stands now, the way to think about it is that, look, it will generate responses or FAQs or whatever 10x faster, but then we will still need a human being to kind of go through them. That will reduce the speed, but it will still be greater than the speed that you started with. Okay, so it will still be 3x more or 2x more than it was. So we're still not there in terms of the exact tools to make that happen, but I think by next Confluence, we will certainly have more confident tools out there.
What you're already doing is giving you productivity gains. So I think don't worry about 10x and 100x. I think the world doesn't get that on a sustainable basis. But getting reasonable productivity, which is twice or three times your competitor or a world standard, is more than what we need. And slow down that productivity hunger by balancing it with checking. And checking comes because very often our data is not in order. So a very big prerequisite for anything it was true of AI, and is much more true when you you have to build a data culture which has to precede the AI culture. The garbage in, garbage out thing is valid here as well. Earlier we could see that the garbage is going in, and therefore we could predict the garbage will come out and therefore clean up the data. I think the same thing applies here. Here we're taking vast amounts of data. So the data integrity at scale becomes a kind of a prerequisite. And yet you keep people to check. I think that's the important thing, because it is a black box. But as you check and find defects and you feed that into an input, process, output, feedback loop, things will get better. So that extra checking may take you from 10x to 5x, but that's good enough. And that would be a pragmatic way to deal with it. Yeah, we'll come here.
My name is Vic. Two things I just want to clarify, because since experts are there. One, see, we are very, very fond of the word called innovation, and everybody, like to do something innovative in their organizations. Now, this AI and Gen AI becomes a very talking word. Now, I think, every technology induction has to have some incremental or exponential value addition. But are we not flowing in a direction where just our passion for innovation, we are trying out and putting up a lot of effort and expenditure in without even realizing whether it's just a add-on value or it's exponential value. That's one thing I want to know.
So quick answer to that is you have to learn that. So why did I say start with top left easy things which you can judge? Because you can judge when you do something which is small and easy. And you say, okay, out of 10, 5 are not working. That's what we do in life. So the common principles we are saying is apply those common principles in a pragmatic way. And what doesn't work, keep it aside before you start taking on problems which are big problems. So it's a very pragmatic step-by-step method. And you have to be innovative. I think that's a method for survival. And mankind is innovative. Those who are more innovative do a little better. That happens to all of us in our companies. So these tools provide us ways to do new things. And we should be mindful of which do more and which do less, so we do get productivity. That will be a quick answer to your first question.
Second, on the just personal note, out of curiosity, I'm asking. Now, with a lot of usage of AI, people stop thinking. Suddenly it will go to the education level also. So many times we just to put up.
The moment you said stop thinking, he gave it to me.
Now, I've seen now kids nowadays. now kids nowadays, when you give a report to be made, they put up in Gen AI and get the report. Now, do you think there is a reverse thing happening? That development of the brain is not happening because they have stopped putting effort in thinking big. Now, Gen AI can respond to you for everything which is available right now as a solution. But what about the new thinking? So too much of adherence to the AI part might restrict the evaluation of brains also. Maybe that's out of curiosity I'm asking.
So, this is a PhD level question. Okay, very frankly. And actually there are lots of people who are doing massive research on this. And there are really two sides. If you believe, again, Yuval Noah Harari, for example, he believes, he's on the dark side. He believes that what you're saying, that at the end of it, AI will do everything. Human beings will just sit there, play video games 24 hours a day. And, the value which will be generated by AI doing everything will be distributed as universal basic income. And so basically you play video games, you get paid at the end of the day. People might think it's a great thing. I think it's the most horrific thing that can happen. On the other hand, think about it on the other hand, and I'm on that side. Frankly, this question was asked even when, it's been asked with every new technology that has come in. That will, this make us less intelligent, less productive, less, etc. You would agree that every generation has turned out to be more intelligent than the generation before. And in spite of the slew of technologies which have come in, if this happened even with search, right? You don't need to know anything now. There's something who just tells you everything that you want. But we've actually, as humans, figured out how to use it to make us more intelligent, better, more productive, prosperous, etc., etc., etc. And so that's the other way to think about it. And I personally think that what we will end up, we'll muddle through, we'll fall a few times, but what will happen will be the second.
Or if I just give the example of us, Vijay and I, using slide rules in college. Then calculators came, they were not allowed. And then everybody realized it's mechanical work. You want to get a solution, you have a problem in mind, and the mechanics of doing it is taking too much time. We got past that. So I think this is another step in the same direction. So there will be people who will use it to be more lazy, which has always been the case. And there'll be people who use it to be more productive. Chances are productive people win out in life, so others follow. So every technology in that sense, so the question of dual use, this is a very powerful tool. So more than worry about people not working will be misuse. And so that regulation is required. But it offers the opportunity to everybody to do more. So even if now, for example, people are saying that the era of knowledge as a purpose for education is gone because it's available. So now what do? Now you have to solve problems. You have to look for new problems. Someone talked about the university. When we set up the university, we set up a lot of interesting goals for ourselves. And one of the things we said is we want to create people who are not problem solvers, but who seek out new problems. Many problems in the world are not known and not solved. Identifying, articulating problems. So solving may become easier, but the search for problems is unlimited. So when we say startups, they're looking for a new opportunity before the big company does. They're actually trying to solve a problem before anybody else. This quest of man will remain. And these are just tools to make it more productive. And then, as I said, I think I'm very selfish about India. If Indians can take the jobs of the world, I'm okay with it. We have many people who need jobs, so that's the focus.
Yeah. As we give to the next person. In fact, we were also told on the same vein as we were growing up that it's not the answers that matter. You have to ask the right questions. We forgot that, right? Our educational system, and if I may say so, our corporate system kind of made us forget that. What are prompts? Prompts are the right questions. The better a prompt and the better a question you ask, the better and more better you get. It's basically you're going back to the... Okay, next. It just, if you go to LinkedIn, everyone is a prompt engineer these days. So, but prompt engineering is asking the right question. By the way, there are prompts I've seen, especially from younger people who have absolutely don't worry about. I worry about us. Okay, who have prompts or questions when they go to a ChatGPT or equivalent, which are two A4 size page long. The more exact stuff you give. So prompt engineering is both an art and science. And there's ways you can work with the model to give you better and better and better answers. And you could do it by experience, or you could actually take some course. There are millions of prompt engineering courses today. Okay, and get better at asking the right question and therefore making the machine do what you want it to do, what was called software programming or coding at one point of time.
Okay, so Manoj Apte here. I'm from Persistent Systems. So I think just to build on the prompt engineering, I think if we know the basic fundamental problems of software engineering, I think 30% of our problems originate in the wrong requirements. So I think hopefully prompt engineering should actually build that whole skill of asking the right questions and getting the right requirements. So, but apart from that, I think I'm just want to give my point of view. I think while GenAI would probably increase the productivity across the board, across the whole SDLC, PDLC by 30-40%, I think it would also mean that we would be able to produce 30-40% more. So it's probably not just going to kill a bunch of jobs, but actually we'll be able to hire so many more people and produce so much of more output, right? My question is, again, kind of building on what the gentleman asked. Are we also looking at, losing out on the originality of creativity? Because, finally AI or GenAI would actually recreate what's already out there, right? And we are looking at, the best piece of code or a best architecture, which is really originally created by a human being. But are we going to look at something which would be generated out of the existing database, right? So question is really, is it really leading to, the downgrade of the whole creativity of the human being?
Much like I go back to the slide calculator, it gave me time to do something more. Did I use it well? How did I use it? So the quest of man, if I was to give a philosophical answer, has always been to remove their own limitations. That's the quest of mankind. So the limitation of how far I can reach, how fast I can reach, because my legs can go only at this speed. We have automobiles and then we have planes and so on. The quest to see how far I can hear is a telephone. The quest to see how much weight can I move, my limitation is I can only move so many kilos. We have cranes. So the quest has always been to remove physical limitations. But then in the this century, I would say beginning of last century, we started saying the quest of how I can think better, faster, more. And in that comes not just the quantitative dimension, but also the creative dimension. So humans get bored easily with mechanical stuff, even if it's so-called intellectual stuff. So that desire is enough to keep us going, to search for something that's more interesting. So unlike this theory that if machine is doing everything, you'll get bored, evidence is that when you mechanize and automate things, the mind starts searching for something to do. That's the nature of the mind. Okay, I think the mind is like a monkey, you don't know what it's doing. So it's true. The mind is an impatient character. It gets bored. So boring things you remove out and keep it curious. So that would be a philosophical reply. I think we will see the reverse happen. That will happen.
You know, there's a wonderful tweet by someone I follow. It says that Google is a search engine. ChatGPT is a thought engine. And you know, there's a lot of depth within this. And as Raji said, I mean, one of the ways which a lot of very intelligent people are using generative AI is as a thinking partner, as a brainstorming partner, as a boxing sparring partner of the mind. Okay, and if you kind of think of it that way, then actually you and them can make magic together, which was very difficult to do, which took a lot much time than what it does now. But you know, we can talk much more about over alcoholic drinks.
There was a question there.
I just want to understand, has there been any use cases around or examples how generative AI can help us to understand how people really learn? Because every individual's need to learn is different. So can L&D professionals
So
do anything?
can you keep this till tomorrow morning? You'll get some very good answers. Our NIIT chief learning scientist is going to join us from the US. And 2 weeks ago, I think we were in the conference, which is our US conference. And we had gone there for 4 days, and they demonstrated to, I think, 60 of our customers, Fortune 1000 customers, on what we are doing in this domain of L&D. What can GenAI do? So we leave it for tomorrow. You'll get a better answer.
Sure.
But if you can hand over the mic to the gentleman.
My name is Harsh Khurana. I actually represent Global Logic. So my question majorly is, as an organization, we have started implementing and training our workforce around SDLC, Copilot, as well as LLM. I think two common issues which I always hear when we are in conversation with leadership. One is on the data privacy. Let's take an example of GenAI LLM. There is a possibility a malware can be injected through that code via routine. So, another question is around the data leakage. So when our employees are working on client laptops, there is a huge possibility that data can be transferred. So what are your suggestions? How should we basically overcome these major challenges? Because this is absolutely are the challenges where no compromise is accepted. So what are your thoughts?
So just be pragmatic. I think doing things which deal with data in ways we don't know, we have to be careful. And that's why when I said you go to the right lower questions, even when you go halfway, your IT has to start playing a very important role. So let me also say one thing. In organizations, the IT department is actually giving a very big pushback to GenAI for good reasons. But the good reasons deal with problems where you have a black box approach. And that's why we are suggesting don't start there. Unless that department itself wants to define a project. Because IT is currently given the responsibility to protect your data. And yet we are worrying with cybersecurity and having all kind of incursions. So that's only one thing. Then we say, okay, now many of the software companies will give you a mechanism to make sure your own data is protected internally. Now deal with it and play with it. But even there may be privacy issues. If I want to find out somebody's salary, I can ask a question and find out. So there are serious concerns about how to protect privacy, the bigger issue, in fact, not yet seen. And we see laws and all coming. So the safety of your data, safety of privacy, making sure that you're not drawing upon data from outside which is not verified, drugs in it, thieves in it, or whatever, starts becoming important when you have a complexity in the application. And organizations need to learn. But what we need to learn is what can I do with this? And that should start small. Because the thing about the difference between AI and Gen AI to me is AI you and I can't use so easily unless we do many things. But Gen AI, you and I can use. So let's start dealing with the low tech, low complexity things and get productivity there. All of us will get, most of us will get productivity there. As you start pushing the boundaries, the issues start coming up. And the organization has to learn that. You can't bring in a consultant and say, put us on high speed. So even with Mr. Kamath, when he was saying, I want everybody to get started, we are saying, well, it'll have to go in a certain manner. It'll have to go in a certain manner because we all need to learn the limitations of this black box. And when you do limited scale applications, the risks that you're talking of are mitigated by the small scale. And as you keep incrementally going, you start coming to places where then IT has to start taking charge. Otherwise, if IT says, don't use it till we are done, that's good old days like IT people were saying that. Finance guys were saying, abhi mat karo, there'll be a problem. So there's a tension here. And the solution that, at least pragmatic solution we're giving, what we started with giving to IT, to companies 40 years ago, was take a step at a time. Take baby steps, learn as you go, have feedback loops, have teams that develop stuff, and then start moving towards heavier applications.
That we are able to see nowadays is every organization wants to make sure that they are in the race, and that's why they have to run fast. And that's why instead of spending more time on step one, as you said, spending more time on step one, implementing it on very low level applications, and then seeing what working well, what not working well, I think that's where they are actually losing in the game.
Yes and no. I would say yes and no. It's a double-edged sword. We don't quite understand. People take risks. We always do. Some will take risks. Some will big wins. Some will lose. Currently, I think the concern is this. It's changing so rapidly. I mean, with him, every time I speak to him in once 5 or 6 days, I tell him what has happened in the last 5 days. And some things have happened. So this is also that stage where better, faster, easier things are coming out. So don't get committed on a project with a methodology which you will say is a problem. Right? So it's a calculated thing, and just for being pragmatic. I think you said there was a question here somewhere.
I think the cycle for Gen AI is, they're saying 6 months, every time it's changing. And essentially what's going to happen is there is a generation Gen AI ready. People, kids who know it, who are native Gen AI, and those who are not. And the cycle is every 6 months. We used to be 2-year cycle. We know that with Moore's law, and that went very far. And with very long life now, average age reaching 78 and all, do you see a risk between those who get it and the difference in what they are able to perform versus those who can't is going to become larger and larger? And that's something not only at an organizational level, but also at a country level. It's not India versus others. It's within the country or within a state. I think it's going to be huge. So I mean, think about compounding at every half-year basis. Those who do it and those who don't. What will be some suggestions, maybe some thoughts?
No, I think what you're saying is that the digital divide could become bigger, faster. I very casually mentioned this concept of Jan AI, okay, which actually is a serious concept, okay. It basically says that, look, in India, we kind of leapfrogged digital by treating digital public infrastructure like Aadhaar or UPI or whatever as a free digital public good. And that kind of transformed everything. And obviously it has had huge benefits, some of which have been quantified, some of which have been non-quantified. Now, I know that there's work happening, and I'm hoping and I'm pushing, and there are others too, saying that, look, if we could build a few Indian LLMs and non-Indian LLMs as one more layer of the India stack, and therefore provide generative AI, or whatever it's called, or Jan AI, the same way as Aadhaar, etc., and then suddenly you have millions, billions, tens of millions, hundreds of million people who have this tool which they can experiment. Look, when WhatsApp came, we didn't have to do massive country-level training classes for it. Okay, I mean, you provided it, people learned it. Today we have 400 million or whatever maximum number of WhatsApp users. So I think the same. Now, therefore, but at this point of time, is this time to make these big moves happen? Yeah, and so far, I'm optimistic, and as Raji said, it's India's moment, etc., and there are these moves, and maybe Mr. Kant will be a good person to ask this. What are we doing so that this digital divide which had been created has now been bridged actually to a major extent. The same thing we can do with generative AI.
We've gone beyond the time. So if there's someone who just doesn't want to leave this room without a question answered, then we should. Yeah.
Thank you so much for answering all our queries, and it's a great session. And generative AI is actually giving the latest and greatest data, and it's relevant also. And I feel in future, generative AI is going to build future engineers also. And in L&D, there are few roles like instructors, coaches, and content developers. Generative AI is going to replace that roles in the future.
So tomorrow you'll get an idea what it can do, what it can't do, but you'll get a very easy to comprehend sense of how each of us could be using Gen AI to have higher productivity in what we do, what our function does, basically. So if everybody in the organization is to be made productive, the job is with all of you. So how do you become more productive and effective? And how does Gen AI help that? I think there's a very specific session we have for that. Sapnesh will be leading.
So we are moving towards 100x, right?
Sorry?
We are moving towards 100x.
No, 100x, I think it's good to get to motivate your boss to say, give me money, I'll do 100x. We did that with Y2K, you remember? We didn't solve the world's problem. So keep it for tomorrow. I think there's a very good session, which is really focused on this audience. So yes, Bimal, we are done. So
Thank you. Thank you, Raji. Jaspreet, may I request Raji to please hand over a token of our gratitude. See, you again make